Welcome to In the Middle. I'm Vykky. I'm a wife, a mom, and a leader shaping some of the world's most beloved brands. This is the podcast for all of us figuring it out in real time. In 20 minutes or less, let's get in the middle of it all. I'm so glad you're here. Okay, friends, we have a meaty episode ahead of us, so much so that it is a two-parter. Today, we are going to talk about what it means to own your career. We are in the middle of owning our career, and I'm really excited to unpack this topic. It is something that I am really passionate about. I think if you talk to anyone in my family or close-knit friend circle, they would tell you that I have always been really career-minded, and it is something that I get fired up about. I love hearing people's career journeys. I love helping people shape their careers. And I'm really excited to talk about this topic today. So before we jump into it, I have one question for you. The only rule is that when you hear the question, you have to be honest and you have to say the first thing that comes to mind. So here's the question. Today, when you think about your career, on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being I am just there to collect a check, and 5 being I am leaning in, I am showing up, I am proactive, I'm planning, I am dialed in on where my career is going. That's 5. Where are you and how invested are you in your career today? First number. Don't overthink it. That first number that popped in your mind, and I know one did, that's the number. And there's no judgment. There is no right or wrong answer. Just remember that number, keep it in mind, and hold it close to your heart. We'll get back to it. Okay, so owning your career. It feels so heavy, and it is. And I have some bad news to tell you. Owning your career is your own responsibility. It's yours and yours alone. Yep, no one's coming to save you. But I also have some really great news. You get to own your own career. You get to decide how you spend a vast majority of your day. Isn't that freeing? Like for me, it's like, wow, I get to curate my day. I get to decide where I spend my time, who I get to spend my time with, and my resources. And I think the more we think about it that way, we position it that way, I have to go to this job. No, I get to go to this job, especially in this economy. Like I get to go to this job every day. And I think that the more you can put yourself in the driver's seat, and that's going to be a theme that you hear, candidly, regardless of the topic, I am so focused on what I can do to always be in the driver's seat of my life. And in the same way, the more you can be in the driver's seat of your career, the better experience I feel like you're going to have. So early in my career, I was interviewing for a role, and the hiring manager, who is now a dear friend of mine, asked me, "Do you have restless leg syndrome?" And I'd never heard that before. And he asked me that question because on my resume, you could see that I'd been places a year, year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, and it just seemed like I'd been hopping around. And I wasn't offended by the question. I actually thought it was funny. It's like one of my favorite stories to tell now when I talk to young people coming up in their career. It's like, I did hop around a bit in my career, but I hopped with intention. I didn't take a role because it was like, oh, I'm going to do this. Like, yeah, I think as a marketer, sometimes you have that shiny syndrome, but that's not the case with my career. There was a ton of intention early on where I would say, okay, what does this role bring to me? I know what I bring to the table, but what is this role going to give me access to? Is it a new industry? Is it working for a leader that I really respect and love and I think is super smart that I want to learn from? Is it actually good for the moment of life that I'm in right now? Whether just having a kid or you're relocating to a new area and you want something that's going to get you in the heart of the city, whatever it is, there has to be a reason to make the switch. The other thing I'll tell you that research has proven is that the longer you stay at a role within the same company, you actually end up losing money. And so I took a lot of those things in mind as I, especially early in my career, made the different pivots. Again, I would say it's important to be intentional about it. You want to try to avoid doing the same exact job at each place, because I think you get to a point where now you're just pouring into the business, but you're not necessarily having things pour back into you. You should always try to either expand your remit out this way if you're not able to go up. But however you design it, and I won't overprescribe it to you today, but however you design it, there should be thought and intentionality that goes into that. And so I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, oh, everyone has had a rosy career. It's been super healthy organization to organization. I think if you've worked long enough, all of us can probably point to a moment where either the organization itself wasn't healthy, or you had a leader that wasn't so great, or you had colleagues that weren't so great. So I don't want to discount that experience of, I want to be intentional, but this actually has been a really hard experience for me. And I would say, especially for those of you who are in it right now, there's still a way for you to be in the driver's seat of your career, even in that. From the very formal approach of working with your HR or HRBP, or however your organization describes the folks who work in HR, going through formalities in that way, documentation, I am team, keep receipts. So doing those things, as well as if you're either not having a lot of success there, looking in other departments, working with other teams to see if there's opportunity for you to move and switch teams there. Even in that, there's some intentionality. There's some proactive planning and ownership of your career in that regard. And of course, looking outside of your organization. I think that there is this maybe unspoken rule about staying somewhere a year. And of course, there's some truth to it, and you'll have to explain it to a recruiter if you leave an organization in 3 to 6 months or whatever the time is. But if you can make it a year, certainly do it. But if you can't and an opportunity opens up and you can justify the jump, go, especially if the organization is unhealthy and it's impacting your mental health and your well-being. And I want to make sure that, as much as we're talking about owning your career and I'm a naturally positive person, it's not lost on me that sometimes folks end up in places and working under people where it's really not healthy. And so I just encourage you to, again, put yourself in the driver's seat. What can you do today to get yourself out of that situation? So another thing to consider is, like, as we continue to grow in our career and we have some wins under our belt, you should think about how you show up as a colleague and as a peer, a direct report, and know in the back of your mind that you should get to some point in your career where your work speaks for itself. I'll share a story. Earlier in my career, I worked in sports, and I worked for Arizona State in their athletic department, and I was running social there. And after getting engaged, I made the decision to move back to North Carolina. And prior to moving back, of course, I shared with my leader that I was leaving, and my leader happened to be at a conference with someone at Duke University in the athletic department. And they started sort of talking about, oh, I'm losing my girl who runs social. She's moving back to Durham. She's getting married, blah, 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 blah. My leader eventually becomes my leader at Duke, hears about it, and is like, hang on, wait, you have a social person coming back? We're looking for a social person. And that honestly like brokered the conversation with me going to Duke and eventually running social for Duke Athletics. And so it's something that I always reflect on, and I am grateful for both of my leaders who, one, thought enough of me to say my name in a room where I wasn't, and a leader that I eventually reported into to say, like, I have a need. This person has been vetted. I like their work, and to bring me on. And so as much as we can, like, it's not just about where you are. You always need to think about who is going to say your name. It might be someone that you haven't worked with in years who may say, oh, this person was so good at this thing. I wonder what they're doing now. And it's just a LinkedIn away from a new opportunity. So when you're thinking, whether you're in a really healthy situation and you're not thinking about taking a leap, or if you feel like, hey, I've run my course at this company, Does your work speak for itself? Do you think your former peers or current peers and colleagues would be willing to say your name in a room where there's an opportunity? And if the answer is no today, that's okay. Like, you're doing the hard reflective work to say there's opportunity. And that's the first step. Now you have to take stock and say, what can I do to change that? I would say your reputation is similar to like your credit score or your GPA. It takes a lot to build it up, and unfortunately, it takes very little to kind of chip away at it. But you can rebuild, you can reinvent yourself, you can prove that you are the resident expert, that you are the talent, you are um, the coworker that someone wants to advocate for and say their name. And you can start making that change today. Okay, so the next step of what it means to owning your career is being honest with who you are. And that I would say maybe sounds so simple at first blush, because I think we all have this idealistic view of ourselves sometimes. But I think when you really peel back the layers and you really look at your like true human self, like what what do you truly value? How do you like to spend your time? And what really matters to you? I knew pretty early on, and if you heard my origin story, you know that originally I wanted to be an attorney in sports and entertainment, and I sort of got introduced to marketing as an aside and fell in love with it and never looked back. And I knew early on that, oh, I wanted to be in the marketing and communication space. And so from there, when I had that spark lit, I really just had this tangible, okay, I'm going to chase after this thing. I know I eventually want to be a leader in the Marcom space. And the work that I decided to do, the organizations I decided to join, there was a ton of intentionality behind it. All of the organizations I would say that I've worked for has put a lot of value in their marketing and or communication space. And I've sat in both organizations. Today I sit in a communications organization, but I've spent just as much amount of time in a marketing organization. And they often, sometimes they actually sit together and other times they sit separately. So I didn't really kind of stumble around. I knew for sure that that was the space that I wanted to be in. And once I had that clarity, it really helped to avoid distractions, because we'll have those things that pop up and you're like, oh, that could be interesting. I could do that. Or I like houses. I could sell real estate. And I do love houses. But I knew that that wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I've been able to be laser focused on that role and being in marketing and communications. So the first step is really asking yourself the question, like, what do I value? If you're someone who really loves just working a 9 to 5, you want your weekends completely free, you don't want to have a work phone, you know, you want to be a very like just a predictable company, I would say maybe a startup or a mom and pop shop likely isn't for you. And that's totally fine. In the same way, if you are a builder, you are scrappy, you are someone that like loves a pre-IPO, going to a really large, storied heritage brand may drive you crazy because you feel like you are forced into this specific swim lane where you don't get the opportunity to like, oh, I'm going to dabble in this. And hey, I may teeter totter over into sales a little bit. That may not be for you either. I think the next kind of thing that is probably going to be a little bit of a maybe hot topic is for my young people. Younger people, if you're listening to this, I've got some maybe, I don't know, I don't think it's polarizing, but maybe it's a little like a harder thing to hear. I personally don't believe that young people fresh out of college should go into remote jobs. And before you hate me, here's why. Early in your career, I believe that the first year or two, you're really there to learn. Of course, you add some value, you do some executions, things like that, but the real goal is to learn. And not only learning the job, but you're also learning the nuances of corporate. You're learning how to properly send an email. You're learning how to run a meeting and put together agendas, and you get to watch your boss navigate hard topics after the meeting is over. You kind of learn water cooler talk. And I find that when you are sitting in a remote position, you miss out on all of that because you get on Teams, you get on Zoom, whatever is your telecommunications soup du jour, and once the meeting's over, it's kind of over. You might have some interaction on chat, but you don't get to see the things that happen in between. And so I would encourage young people in particular to do your level best to get into an office. I say in the same way for young people, I would be weary about going to an organization that's too small, especially if they don't have a clear path for development and coaching. You may look up and land with a leader who has a heart for developing talent. And so they'll bring you along with them. They'll make sure that you have a true and proper onboarding experience and you get to take on some projects, but you get the air cover you need as you grow and develop. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen all the time. More often than not, you're kind of thrown into the deep end and you are expected to, at a minimum, tread water. And I don't think that that's fair, especially for young people. And I find that young people often maybe exit corporate prematurely because that's been their lived experience. So I would encourage you to join a larger organization that has some rigor and some swim lanes. You get the opportunity to see the way business is run, and you get an opportunity to watch your leader and your peers and colleagues and those that are a few years ahead of you to see how they navigate the corporate space. I think one other thing that, let's just call it like an unlock, and something that I wish I would have done early in my career, I think there is a lot to be said about working for an agency. I see such a difference in folks who started their careers in agencies, and these are like mid to large sized agencies. Again, the small mom and pop shops. I think that there's value there, but I would just weary if I was sort of raising my kid and we're talking about careers, I would steer them away from a small agency. But a mid to large size agency is almost like this, you get this accelerated course in what it means to navigate corporate because you are serving at the pleasure of the clients that you work for. And you get to take all of those skills when you decide to go brand side and bring those skills there. And so you have really developed a ton of really good skills to help you navigate corporate, because there's so much more rigor on the agency side. So that's my take for young people. I'd say for people who, man, I got some hot takes today. My next hot take is for the folks who say, I'm tired of working for somebody. I don't like having a boss. And so you go off into entrepreneurial lane. I don't necessarily think that's the right approach. And I don't think maybe that's the best reason to go into your own business. I would say if you consider yourself a visionary, you see a gap in the market that only you can fill, you have this pull to bring something to the market that is your own, you want to put your mark on the world, I see that as a great path for someone who wants to be an entrepreneur. But saying that you don't want to work for someone is short-sighted because, spoiler alert, you will always work for someone. You will work for your customers and your clients if you're delivering a product or service. So you have to answer to them. And as you scale your business, let's say you take it public, you're going to have a board. You're going to have a board of directors. And guess what? You're going to work for them. You're going to answer to them. So you're never going to get away from answering to someone. And I want to push you a little bit more to say, what's the problem with answering to someone? Okay, I'm going to get off your toes. I'm just saying. Um, and my last group, the group that I think are honestly probably the bravest people listening or watching this podcast right now, are the people that are thinking through what it means to exit the workforce to stay at home with your kids. The fact that you're even considering it is so brave. And I would just encourage you that if you're having that pull, if your heart is, when it's late at night and you're like, ugh, you have like the Sunday scaries, you don't want to go to work because you just want to stay home with your babies. If you can make the budget work and you see a clear path, you have to remember that your kids are going to only be this age this one time. You can always go back to the workforce. It will be there. But your kids needing you, your kids being this small, your kids being this active in their sports and all of those things, it only happens once. So if you have the pull and your family can adjust to one income, do it. It'll be worth it. Okay, friends. So the last strategy or topic I'll say around what it means to own your career, money can't be the only motivator. It can't be the only thing that you're like, well, I'm making this amount of money, so I'm definitely killing it. I'm owning my career. I get it. We need money to pay our bills. You certainly can't do it on hopes and dreams, but you play a dangerous game to overlook potential toxicity, to overlook taking the same job over and over because you're getting a $10, $20, $30,000 bump each time, and you find yourself in a place where you are unfulfilled, or you've backed yourself into a role where you've hit that ceiling. Money can't be the only thing that signals it's time for you to move. Like I said at the top of our time together, you spend a lot of time at work. So if you're making $1 billion, but your boss drives you crazy, the work is boring, or it actually is against your values, it's going to start to really bother your soul and your spirit. So I would say, as you, and maybe there's someone out there right now that is toggling between some offers. First of all, we love to see it. But I would say, as much as you're going through the interview process and they're assessing you, you have to also be asking critical questions that you value. So only you know the things that make you tick and the things that suck your energy. So if having a leader who is already stretched thin and you feel like you're going to need a lot of attention, you need to ask questions about their one-on-ones and how frequently they do them, or how many people are reporting to them and how they're managing their time, to get a gauge on how plugged in this leader is going to be. Or if it's important for you to be able to scale your career, you need to ask questions about how long are typical employees usually in role? What's the promotion path for this role? Have you seen other people? You can't just run with the money and say, "Oh, I'll figure it all out in the back end." Like, the money is one of many data points that you should collect when you are exploring new opportunities or when you're moving away from an opportunity. It can't just be about the money. I know that's probably hard to hear, especially in this economy, especially how hard it is to land a new role. And I get it. You may be out of work for a while and you're like, I need a job. If you need to take the job, do it. Please don't listen to this, watch this, and you're like, well, Vykky said it's other things I have to, I can't overlook it. Let's be reasonable. But for those of you who have choice, for those of you that are in a healthy job and you're just exploring what's out there, don't squander this opportunity and overlook red flags. That's really the heart of what I'm trying to share. And I believe that when you make an informed decision, when you make a decision that is backed by data, how long people are staying in role, staying with the company, Are you looking at Glassdoor to see the reviews? Of course, usually when you're looking at reviews, there is the very best and the very worst, and you want to get somewhere in that middle, You want to get that mid-range. Look for themes. What are the thematic things that pull through? And you'll start to see like, oh, turnover. There's a new person every 18 months. Gosh, what's going on there? This is why I'm saying you can't just look at the dollar signs. There are some organizations that pay really, really well, and it's because it's not healthy and they can't keep people. And so they try to attract people based on money. So it's one point. It's not everything. It can be one important point, but it's not the end all be all. So friends, that's the what. We just unpacked what it means to own your career. So over the next week, I want you to think about what that means. I want you to think about the score you gave yourself at the top of our time together. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. The 1 being, hey, I'm just here to get a check. And the 5, I'm leaning in, I'm invested, I'm getting coaching, I'm coaching people. I see my 3, 4, 5 year, incredible. Spend some time. I'd love to hear where you're ranking yourself. And next week, we will come back together to talk about the how. So the first step was the what it means to own your career. I'm going to share some practical tips that I use and that I've learned. I can't wait to hear from y'all and hear how you're owning your career. And we'll unpack it. I look forward to talking to you guys next week. Bye. Thanks for listening to In the Middle. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend and click subscribe so you never miss an honest conversation about life in the middle. I'll see you next time.